The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Now we would like to hand over to the co-prosecutors to put some questions to the civil party if they would wish to do so.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Upal. Thank you for being here with us today for this very difficult experience, sharing your suffering with us. I have a few questions to put to you regarding what you have witnessed, in particular on 17 April 1975 and then afterwards. In your written record of interview, D296/2, at answer 2, you say that you had seen the Brigadier Chun Chun on 17 April 1975. Could you tell us who this person was and what happened to him on that day?
Response. After leaving Pat Chen, I was walking to the north direction and I stopped at Psa Thmai. There were groups of Khmer Rouge soldiers with armored vehicles, and I saw a convoy, a motorcade of the Brigadier General. The motorcade was heading to the Ministry of Information, and everyone knew that it was Mr. Brigadier General Chum Chun who had to go to the Ministry of Information, passing the stupa at that location on that road.
Merci. Thank you. Can you tell us how the Khmer Rouge gave the orders to the population to leave the city on 17 April 1975? How did they go about it to warn the people that they had to leave?
Response. At Chen Dom Daik Pagoda, after eating lunch at about 2:30 p.m., we were surrounded by Khmer Rouge soldiers who were armed. They fired into the air and asked us to leave the place for 3 days. They told us that we would be allowed to return in 3 days and that we would not need to bring a lot of things with us. We were worried and were packing and left.
Merci. Thank you. Now I would like to turn to another episode in your personal history. After the evacuation, you said that you ended up in Angkor Che for a while. And when you were there, what did you notice? What did you notice concerning what would happen to the rich people or to the bourgeoisie?
Response. From Pao, I continued my journey until I reached the border of Takao and Kampot, and I met my parents at Tamwan village. It was a prison. My parents knew about this. A lot of the new people who were seen walking, carrying their babies, walking into that office. The office was not big enough to accommodate all these people, so others had to remain outside. But those who went inside would never seen return.
And how did you learn that these were new people? How could you recognize them?
Response. I knew they were new people because their clothing could tell me. Some were wearing white shirts, blue pants, and there was a mixture of colored clothes, and some were seen with big bellies, like wealthy people. So I could tell that these people were the new people because Khmer Rouge would not, the base people would be wearing black clothing instead.
A little while ago, you said that you had to tell lies about your professional career. I believe this was when you had to write your biography for the Khmer Rouge in Pau. Now, later on during the regime, did anybody suspect you of having belonged either to Lon Nol's army or to his police?
This is a good point to raise, and the reason that I survived today. I actually concealed my biography once in Kampong Cham, and later on there was an elder woman who had pity on me, and she said that I knew that you went to a study and that you did not engage in any military or police employment, and then that I should follow her. That is to say that I was a student and not to work as a policeman. And from that day onward, I always said I was a student.
So, you survived those suspicions. But what happened to the former policemen or the former soldiers who were discovered, even a good time after the evacuation of Phnom Penh, for example, in 1977? What fate awaited them?
I did not mention this fact in the attachments to my victim information form, but now it is a good time for me to raise it. In 1977, I was in a mobile unit, and at that time we had to write our biography monthly. And if anyone who wrote that they were in the military for 3 times, then they would be implicated. But I always maintained my stance that I was a student. In my unit there were 100 people. 99 of them were killed by the Khmer Rouge. At the crime site at Wat Cheung Cha in Trang district of Ta Keo province, I was the only person from that unit who survived because I maintained that I was a student. And I did have great pity for my friends who had to tell them the truth, but I did not dare to tell them to lie.
Merci. Thank you. In answer number 6 of D296/2, you referred to a saying that was used by the Khmer Rouge, which is to keep you is no benefit and to lose you is no loss. Can you explain this expression that they used in those days and tell us who those terms were actually applied to?
Thank you for raising this good point. That applied to the case of my father, as the saying went, because my father was sick, so he could not engage in any work, and for that reason they injected him with plain water and he died.
Merci. Thank you. Generally speaking, Mr. Witness, during the Khmer Rouge period, were you ever treated with respect, dignity, or humanity?
During the period of that regime, nobody, not even a single person, ever smiled at me. Not at all. Because they knew that I came from Phnom Penh and they did not know whether I engaged in any work in the past. And because of my rather big build, they suspected that I held some kind of a rank in the military role. But I tried to be very humble and to please them, and for that reason I survived.
I only have a few more questions to ask. There is one point that I want to come back to because it wasn't entirely clear just now. Twice you said that you had lost your fiancée. Why were you not able to marry your fiancée during the Khmer Rouge dispensation?
My fiancée was a woman whom I understood her well, and she understood me well, and we was ready to get married. Unit chief asked me whether any of my fiancée's relatives, members, ever smashed by Angka, and I replied that her elder brother was smashed by Angka. Then the unit chief said, in the case that the elder brother of the woman was smashed by Angka, then Angka would prohibit me from marrying her, because I was the son of Angka, and it was up to Angka to organize the marriage. And if after the marriage we could not go along together, then the application of the common practice in Sector 33 would be used. That is, pretty women would marry ugly men, and the uneducated ones would marry the educated ones. And the unit chief said, if I did not follow the instruction, then I would be killed. For that reason, I followed it through.
Thank you for your answer. Now, to close, let me ask you if, as an evacuee from Phnom Penh and as a son of Angkar, as you termed it yourself, did you owe complete submissiveness to the Khmer Rouge leaders you had to work under during the Khmer Rouge regime?
During the Khmer Rouge regime, if one was ordered to dig a canal, for example, that person has to dig 6 cubic meters per day, that work has to be done. If not, then no rights would be given to that person. And if that person were to protest, that person would be refashioned, and the next process would be that person be killed. So we had to follow it through. President, the co-prosecutor, the time is now up for the prosecution. It lasts now for 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That had in fact brought me to a close, and I'm very glad that you gave me this time. Thank you to Mr. Mr. Civil Party.
President, the floor is now given to Nguyen Chia's defense to put questions to this civil party.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Civil Party, I have a few questions to put to you. Before the break, you were speaking about what was happening to Lon Nol military, and if I remember correctly, above a certain rank. Did I understand that well?
Are you asking about Lon Nol soldiers? Can you please specify the time period?
If I remember correctly, you were at one point reading from your statement, and I think that was in reply to a question about the screening of Lon Nol soldiers on or around 17 April. Do you remember that?
I do not understand your question, Counsel.
In your statement, you have been speaking in your answer to question A2 about the screening of officials of the Lon Nol regime from the ranks of second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major and colonel. Do you remember that?
I was en route, and when I reached Pak Ao district, the propagandists of the Khmer Rouge in Paau made an announcement that for those soldiers who were at the rank from the major lieutenant and the lieutenant upward will be called upon by Angkar. And at the Cheung Prey Pagoda in Cheung Prey district, they made a biography and a card would be given. And for those people who made their biography and stated that they were a soldier or a policeman, then they would be put in one side. And once they have sufficient a number of people, then they were sent to Paau Pagoda. I myself was amongst those people.
Would you be able to tell us how exactly you were able to witness all this? Were you able to see that former Lon Nol soldiers were writing the biography and were giving those biographies to the local Khmer Rouge cadres?
When we were sent to a pagoda near our market, we were given a piece of paper to write our biography. And for those who had their biography sent from Cheung Prey Pagoda, would have to write it clearly there. And when they saw the ranking on the paper that is from the Major Lieutenant upwards, then they will be gathered up and sent further.
But would you be able to describe to us how you were able to see that? How were you able to know what those people had written, and how were you able to understand what the decision was in respect of these people? Can you just describe for us how you could see all that and hear all that and understand all that?
Allow me to respond. At that time, I was amongst those major lieutenants, and the captains. I was writing my biography, so did they. And I saw what they wrote on their biography. And then the Khmer Rouge collected those papers, and then they would screen them. And that was the process that they did. And of course, I saw this with my own eyes.
But how were you able to see what other people had written? Did they give this piece of paper first to you before they handed it over to the Khmer Rouge cadres who were responsible?
Allow me to tell you that they were deceived by the propaganda, as they would be given their job back. So those people, for example, the major lieutenants, they would say they were the major lieutenants. And there was a man of a big bill who was a captain, and he wrote that too. And another person who was a major wrote that too. And he ordered the lower ranks to line up. So I knew it from my experience, and I bore witness to that. I hope you're clear on this point, Counsel.
Well, I'm afraid not, Mr. Civil Party. My question is how you came into the position that you were able to read whatever this captain or major had written on this piece of paper. Why were you privy to that information?
I think I have told you sufficient enough because I was there and I saw what they wrote on their document, and that is all. I do not know what else to tell you, Counsel.
I don't have much time anymore, but my question would still be, how did you see what was written on those pieces of paper? Did those people give it to you? Did you get it from the Khmer Rouge cadres? How were you able to read exactly, for instance, what this captain or major had written on this piece of paper?
President, Civil Party, please wait. The assigned Civil Party lawyer, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to object against this question because it is repetitive. I think the Civil Party has made sufficiently clear that he has seen what was written. So I do not understand where this question is going to, and I object.
Well, that is exactly the point. He doesn't answer my question as how he was privy to whatever was written on those pieces of paper by this Major X or this Captain Y. It's not a repetitive question, it's just a question to get clarification on the sources of his knowledge.
The objection is not sustained. Civil Party, please respond to the question. However, it has to be clear that are you referring to the events in general, or are you referring to a specific point in time? From his response, he knew about some people who were nearby him. And of course, when people were writing and when they were nearby, they may ask each other about this or that. And that's what the Civil Party replied. And he also heard of other people talking about that when he were amongst them. So you have to make your question specific. Are you referring to a specific period of time or in general?
No, I'm referring to a very specific moment in time. What happened at Pau Market and what happened when other people were asked to give a biography. So I'm asking something about a very specific moment and is referring to his answer to question 2 in document D296/2. So my question simply would be, if I may follow up about this captain, how would you know what this captain had written on his form?
Allow me to repeat myself once again. When we were at Pa'a Pagoda, the people already told them that they were major lieutenants. So those people and the families were sent to Pagoda near Pa'a Market, and then they made biography. And at that time, they shared among themselves. They asked each other what they did. And after they made those biographies, they were called one after another. And then a major was asked to assign to take charge of them. And then they were lined up, and amongst them to line up. So there were several of us, that is from the major lieutenant rank up. Then they were taken on motorbike, and there were 5 motorbikes. And when they had been taken away, and for those lower ranks, for example, private, then they were allowed to stay behind. And as I said, I was a private, so I was spared and not taken to go with them.
Mr. President, I obviously have many questions to ask him, but of course also mindful of the 7 minutes that we have been awarded. I would like to continue, because if this is evidence, then we need to have the possibility to cross-examine, obviously. So I'm seeking your guidance as what to do in respect of this civil party.
President, what about case and parts defense? How much time do you anticipate that you would need?
I have a few questions. We were told that we had 7 minutes per civil party, and that is extremely short to ask questions. So I would support my learned colleague's request if he wants to continue, but I would also myself like to use the time that was originally allocated.
We will grant additional 5 minutes to Noon Chia's team.
Mr. Witness, Mr. Civil Party, how many, that was a Freudian slip, Mr. Civil Party, how many people were there in total when this process of information gathering was going on?
If it is fresh, then I would tell you with no hesitation, but it's been more than 30 years. And my recollection is rather poor, so that's all I can recall. I can not tell you any further details regarding this point.
Do you remember anything what the Khmer Rouge cadres were saying when these people were asked to give their biographies?
I cannot recall that specific. It's been so long. I apologize for that.
Do you remember if you were giving those other people who were majors or captains or had other ranks warnings about not to fill in what they really are? What they really were?
If I were to tell you or to tell them that, then I would not tell that myself was a reserved public servant.
Did you see this captain or this lieutenant be driven away on the back of a motorbike, and if yes, where to?
When they made a decision that they were telling them the truth, then a person on a motorbike would take them at the back of the motorbike, and there were 5 motorbikes in total, and they were driven away, but I did not know where they were driven to.
But were you actually present when a decision was made that somebody should step on the back of a bike and be driven away?
I think I need to repeat myself again here. I was also part of the groups that were detained by the Khmer rules. Of course, they were driven one by one on the back of the motorbike. I hope I'm clear now.
Mr. Civil Party, would it be possible that you maybe have heard of a story like this, but that you haven't actually witnessed it?
Response. I cannot, or I do not how to respond to your question like that. The President. Mr. Paul, this is the way how questions are put during the cross-examination sessions. You are supposed to respond to the questions based on the best of your knowledge. Counsel only asked you whether you saw this with your own eyes or you heard about this. That's a simple question, and this is the way how some questions are put. So please respond.
I will repeat the question. Mr. Civil Party, would it be possible that this story or the events of selecting Lon Nol soldiers is something that you have heard and not actually witnessed yourself? You not actually saw it with your own eyes? Would that be possible?
Response. Mr. President and Council, I saw this and I bore witness to things that happened at that time. That's all I can say. The President. Thank you, Council, for Mr. Nuntia. Your time is now up, and we would like to hand over to councils for Mr. Kilsampon to put questions to the Civil Party.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Pal, I have a few questions for you regarding what you said about what you experienced on 17 April. I'd like to remind you, or to a segment from your written statement that you confirmed before us. This is your answer to question number 2. And you say the following, and I quote free translation: on 17 April, I was in the Chaktumuk Theater. It was about 8:30 in the morning, and one of my chiefs ordered me to stand in line, and then I heard shooting, and the shooting, they were shooting inside the theater. My commander jumped on a motorbike and escaped, and then we followed. I left the barracks, and then I met a Khmer Rouge who told me that I should give up my military boots and that I should take off my helmet. So therefore I walked barefoot into Petchin. End of quote. And earlier today, in a less elaborate way, you said pretty much the same thing. When you talked about this Khmer Rouge you met on 17 April, who told you that it would be better for you to give up your boots and your helmet or your beret or whatever, however this was translated. So my question is the following. Why did he tell you this? Why did he ask you to do this? Was this a recommendation, or was this an order, or what was all of this about?
Response. I was still wearing police uniform. I had my police boots and hat. At that time, I was asked to remove the boots and remove the hat to just prove to them, to the Khmer Rouge, that we were defeated. Because
ធ្វើបាក់វេទនាដោយដើរជើងទៅទេដោះមួកចេញហ្នឹងគឺបញ្ជាក់ភាពបរាជ័យរបស់លន់នល់
មានបញ្ហាខាងបកប្រែភាសាមន្ត្រីរដ្ឋបាលតុលាការសម្របសម្រួលជាមួយនឹងផ្នែកបកប្រែភាសា
The President, Council, you may continue. I think we are now back on track.
Well, you were answering my question, and I didn't hear, unfortunately, the totality of your explanation in French. I'd like to remind you that my question consisted in asking you how you understood this recommendation or this order that was given to you on 17 April 1975 by this Khmer Rouge who was asking you to take off your boots and to take off your beret or helmet.
Response. The Khmer Rouge asked me to remove my boots and hat. That was a sign that they would like us to do, because it was a sign that Lon Nol soldiers were defeated.
And was this enough to prevent you from being identified as a Lon Nol soldier?
Response. No, that was not. We were still wearing the police uniform and only removing the boots and the hat. We still maintain this identity. It was only meant to tell the Khmer Rouge soldier that the Lon Nol soldiers and police were surrendering by doing that.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Then in your statement, you say the following, and you explain that you continued following your way after you took off your boots and your helmet, and then you say, I went all the way to the Choi Chongbar Bridge, and there a young Khmer Rouge held me at gunpoint and asked me if I had a gun or not. And I told him no, and this is how this Khmer Rouge soldier let me continue. End of quote. Free translation. So then, civil party. What interested the people who stopped you was whether or not you could be dangerous in any way, whether or not you were armed.
Response. I wish to clarify this a little bit. At that time, the population of Phnom Penh was still cheering or congratulate the victory of the 17th of April 1975, and when I was seen carrying the boots and hat, I was asked whether I was also carrying a gun, and I said no, and they allowed me to go on.
Thank you. And in your answer number 2, again, of your record of 12 December 2009, you say that you were arrested, stopped again, and then searched carefully. And you say they ordered us to line up, and then they started searching us. The Khmer Rouge ordered the people to leave their houses. I walked to the west of... End of quote. So, in terms of your personal experience, that is, you were stopped for a third time by the Khmer Rouge, and during this, when you were searched, people were trying to see whether or not you had a gun. Is that the case?
Response. When I was still wearing this police uniform, the first question they would ask me when they were searching me was whether I was carrying a gun. By saying no, I would be allowed to move on.
Tout à l'heure, lorsque
And earlier, when you answered the questions from your counsel, you spoke about the explanation given to you by the Khmer Rouge to justify the fact that they would ask you to leave the city. And you also spoke about this during your interview, but you were rather brief about this. It's again in answer 2, which is rather long, in fact, 2.5 pages in this record. And then you said the Khmer Rouge told me that I had to leave the city for 3 days only. And earlier today, when you spoke about this, you said that the Khmer Rouge told me to leave Phnom Penh because they needed to reorganize the city. Is that what they told you? Is that how they explained the situation to you then?
Response. I am now old, much older than before, and my memory does not serve me well. But I forgot to tell you that during the time when I said Khmer Rouge asked us to leave the city because they needed 3 days to reorganize the city, I should also have said that they told us that Americans would also bomb or drop bombs.
So your memory is coming back to you, as I see. And last question for you. In this very long answer 2, in your written record of 12 December 2009, you said that several weeks after 17 April, when you were in the village of Trapeng Snor, please forgive me for my pronunciation, which is located in Kompong Cham province, you had received some recommendation for a gentleman called Long Signon, and you stated, and Long Signon told me to discard the laissez-passer because it had been written with a red ballpoint pen. End of quote. And then you explained that this was a laissez-passer that had been given to you by the Khmer Rouge. First of all, can you tell us who this Long Signon was?
Response. Mr. Long Signon was the chief of ELO in Phnom Penh. He had to also conceal his identity. He was a major, but he told the Khmer Rouge that he was a goldsmith. And he told me that, look, as long as a red ball point pen was used on this piece of paper, I should abandon it. Otherwise, I would be killed. And I also said that I was a rubber plantation worker, and other had to also tell a lie to to the Khmer rule so that we could be allowed to leave our village.
I have no further questions, Mr. President.
The President. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Yu Pal. The session on your testimony and statement of suffering as a civil party has now come to an end. You are now excused. Your testimony and statement of suffering may contribute to the ascertaining the truth, and you may now return home. We wish you all the very best. Court officer is now directed to assist with the vessel unit to ensure that Mr. Yuspal is returned home safe and sound. The hearing today comes to an end. The chamber will adjourn, and the next hearing will be resumed on Wednesday, the 29th of May, 2013, and tomorrow is the plowing ceremony, and it is a public holiday. That's why the chamber will not be sitting tomorrow. On the 29th of May, the chamber will be hearing the testimonies and statement of suffering of 4 civil parties: TCCP 156, TCCP 7, TCCP 13, and TCCP 198. We would like to also make sure that this information is well conveyed to the parties of the proceedings and the assistant who would be here to assist the civil parties who are testifying and giving the statement of suffering. Security personnel are now directed to bring Mr. Kyusumpon and Nunchie back to the detention facility and have them return to the courtroom by May 29th at 9 a.m. The court is adjourned.